All right, let's talk about what the best CTP is for each character in the game. Really quick, I am a PvE focused individual, player versus environment. I focus on AB Alliance battle. So my knowledge of the CTPs is going to be focused around that. However, I at least have some exposure to other stuff. I recently made a video suggesting who to build and who not to build, and one of the individuals who was watching my video commented and asked about CTPs, so that kind of inspired this video. So here we go. Before I dig through each character, so if you want that, check in the comments for a timestamp. I'm going to give you a high-level overview on the CTPs themselves, because I think it's important to know what the CTPs do, so when I'm giving you the advice, you know why I'm giving you the advice. So if you click the menu in the top right corner, you go down here to Marvel Universe. You can actually get to a lot of different information here, but we're going to custom gear. It's going to show all the CTPs. Most of the CTPs are going to be better if you reforge them because they give you an extra option. Sometimes you can use base ones, so we'll cover some of that as well. Brilliants are hard to get. Mighty are like Brilliants, it's just you can get higher stats on them. Conquest is a PvP CTP, and it's important because when you do have it Mighty or higher, which means you've reforged it by taking two of the same type, and you have a chance to get higher. I do recommend waiting for chance up and then using a whole bunch of filler CTPs that you don't need in order to have a higher chance of getting a Brilliant. If you just want a Mighty, you just kind of re-roll it with one other and don't waste the extra materials. So just keep that in mind. With this skill here on Conquest, you get Clash. You can get the specialized skill on the CTP, or you can get an all attack and all defense buff. So you usually want to get the skill because that's what makes it unique. So this Clash increases basic damage by 60% and an additional 50% of concentration based on number of enemies, up to 3. Really nice for timeline battle and stuff like that. Guard break immunity. If you don't know what guard break is, if you're using a skill and somebody interrupts your skill, that's breaking your guard. So if you have guard break immunity, that can happen. So you can continue to do long animation skills and not get interrupted. That's actually critical for most characters in PvP. Very important to have, and some actually require it because they have such long skill animations. Recovery, of course, is always nice. This wall here decreases damage received. So it's all about that survivability. Conquest is kind of like the best for PvP right now. We're going to jump down to the Reforge section because pretty much the advice on all these CTPs is going to be about the same. But like I said, if you reforge it to at least a Mighty, you're going to get that extra skill ability. Transcendence, back in the day, we used to just say put it on any character who has like clones or summons like Clea or Loki and stuff like that. For the most part, this CTP seems to be mostly focused for PvP. I don't recommend using it for PvP because it's just not going to help you that much. But penetration penetrates defense. Beatdown gives you additional pierce by running around. Then you have an increase to your attack. Ignore dodge, which is always nice for PvP. Reflect all damage and invincibility. So all of that stuff kind of plays together pretty nicely. I believe maybe the reflect helped on the clones or something like that. Maybe that's why. I don't remember why they used to give that advice. It's just something that stood out to me. But for the most part, Transcendence is mostly a filler. Authority. Authority is fantastic, especially reforged with steel. If you don't have a Conquest, a steel authority is fantastic for almost all the PvP characters. So it decreases all damage received by 30%, and another 20% of concentration helps you survive more, right? Guard break immunity, we already talked about that. Invincibility, and increase all damage based upon damage received, and accumulates based upon that pure damage as well, up to 10% of your max hit points. And it gives you more hit points. So all around, it lets you do more damage by receiving more, and helps you block most of that damage anyway. So great CTP for PvP. Energy is pretty much all based around your PvE world boss legendaries. You want to have this for characters who have rotations that allow you to proc real easily on a single skill. And we'll point that out as we go recommending characters. So basically, really quick down here at the bottom, increase basic damage by 200% for one attack. That's like 3 times the amount of damage for a single attack. So if you don't proc on the right skill, you don't do all the damage that you're supposed to. This chain hit is basically any skill that hits for a long period of time and does damage over time. Some of them are infinite chains. It increases that as well. We have Beatdown, which is that extra pierce from running around. So all around for this, for the most part, world boss legendaries, usually we're going to use a CTP like this for most characters. Rare niches in other types of environments, but again, if they don't have a nice smoother rotation, usually it doesn't help that much. Usually. There's always exceptions. Destruction is kind of a glorified obelisk at the bottom here. You know, it's got the damage proc, just like the energy did. It also has guard break immunity. This used to be the one that was the go-to for both PvP and PvE. For the most part now, it's world boss legendary PvE only. It has this strike. It increases damage dealt to boss types, which are the world bosses. So there you go. Patience is a kind of a niche PvP. If you don't have authorities or conquests, it has this defend, which gives you a barrier, right? Ignores cancel and pierce, helps them survive. Extra hit points, fantastic stuff. Yes, all of that would be good for Hulk, by the way. Dodge, all attack, activation hit points. So when hit points is 50% or below, these will pop off, and it's going to decrease damage received from reflect effects. And it also does reflect and has invincibility. So this is still a decent CTP for PvP. Refinement. Vitality, recovers hit points, right? And it based upon additional equal to 35% of concentration. Max hit points increase, recovery rate increase. When your hit points are below a certain point, it creates a barrier to help you survive, and you recover 20% of your hit points. It's all about that survivability piece. The egg, as many people will call it. All of those, like right there, patience and refinement, are both for PvP mostly. So is regen. Regen used to be the old hotness until Conquest took over, and now with Reforging, Authority is the second best. A lot of people don't use regen anymore. You have penetration, again, penetrating defenses, guard break immunity, extra hit points, recover 10%, and create a shield. So all of this just helps with survivability. Regen's not terrible, but these three are kind of like underneath the Authority, Reforged with Steel, and the Conquest. So then we talk about Rage. Rage is like the hotness. This is what everyone wants. Basically, for the most part, Rage is pretty much good in every PvE mode. However, under certain circumstances, you want to use other CTPs because these are hard to come by. Now, if you reforge them, you get this Enraged. So you do this extra damage. You get your critical rate and dodge, which are important in a minute here. And instead of proccing on a single skill, while the proc is active, top left corner, you'll see a little green vest as a countdown timer. While it's active, all skills being used while it's active are amplified. They're increased by 0.9% basic damage per 1% of dodge rate and critical rate. Now remember, they cap out at 75. So if I'm understanding it appropriately, if you do, you can do the math yourself if you want, but it does a huge boost, and it definitely works. Everyone's seen it work. It's fantastic. And you can also ignore bosses' damage decrease by 60%. So it's about doing that damage to GBR, World Boss Legendaries, and AB. It's, like I said, the AB creme de la creme, best CTP out there. Veteran, I've never seen or used before. I don't really look at it because it's hard to get. So if people know about Veteran, fine, but I just don't mess with it. Judgment. Judgment is like Rage in the fact that it will proc for a period of time for all skills used in it, but it increases damage to all elemental damage types. And it does it by 200. It also has the chain hit in there as well. It's got the all attack, and it has type amplification. You run around, and you kind of, in a way, have a secondary proc for type skill damage, additional type skill damage. So based upon what elemental skill it's going to increase. Judgment is for your characters that potentially can't use energies because they don't have a real smooth rotation, but all their skills are elemental damage based. And you don't want to use all of your rage on characters that are able to use judgment in most cases, because judgment's going to be good enough for them and they're going to fly through things. Apparently also Pierce, mighty judgment specifically with type amplification, Pierce really helps it a lot. Now what I've noticed and what I've seen from talking to other people, if you're in ABX, judgment is fine. If you are in ABL, you want to rage. Rage seems to perform better in ABL. So if your character is used in ABL at all, you probably should go with the rage, even if they're an elemental type character, but judgment's a nice backup for many of them. Greed is kind of a PvP deal, especially when you reforge it with this ambush. Ignores enemies damage decreased by 35%, an additional 25% of concentration, and then it has this rotating proc. Increase basic damage dealt to combat and blast types, increase basic damage dealt to speed and universal. So one of those procs will hit at a time, and it will be random, as far as I can tell. It's nice for a PvP scenario. That's usually where people use it, and there's only a few characters that can actually make good use of greed, in my opinion. So we'll call them out when we talk about the characters. Last but not least is Insight. Insight is your support CTP. So the basis of it is basically just going to increase basic damage dealt to all allies. You have this character on the team. Now, 2 insights on 2 different characters do not stack. What does stack is one of these 2 abilities could be, going on up here. So all allies increase basic damage dealt to boss types by 15%. And remember, these are showing the max stats. They can sometimes roll less, and decrease additional pierce damage received by 20%. So if you have 2 different skill sets, they can stack that piece, but the bottom piece only affects once if you have 2 support characters with insight. So you usually just want insight on 1 support character in most cases. So there's a high level overview of them. The next thing I want to point out to you really quick before I dig through all the characters is if you go into your character screen, you go down to custom gear, you can go to manage custom gear. And in the top left corner, there's this little pyramid-like thing with stars at the top. So if you click on that, it'll show you how most of the player base are using these characters. So for example, with Doctor Strange, and you can click through this and change their characters, or you can go to that character screen, it'll show you the percentage of players with that CTP equipped. Out of CTPs equipped. I don't think it counts obelisks. So I think it's players with a CTP equipped, how many of them have a certain CTP. So 89% in this case. That can help guide your decision as well. So let's go through all the characters. I'm going to give you my opinion really quick on what CTPs I would equip with them. We're going to assume you have the latest uniform, which I have for all the characters, and we'll go from there. Doctor Strange is 100% a rage character. If you're not going to put a rage on him, you want to put an obelisk on him. Back in the day, you used to be able to put on an authority or even a regen because he did pretty decent in PvP. He doesn't do that well anymore, so you want to keep him for World Boss Legendary and GBR mostly if you're going to use and build him. So as you can see here, I have a brilliant rage on him. He's my favorite character, so yay. Flex on rank 12. Used to be rank 8. Okay, anyway. Next character, Magneto. Magneto is 100% a rage character. He's pretty much an AB focused character. You can use him in multiple PvE game modes, but rage because he's pretty much a spam character. Shang-Chi, honestly, you should not put a CTP on him at all right now. If you're going to put a CTP on him back in the day when he was good in PvP, which he is not anymore in my opinion, an authority was fantastic on him, with steel, of course. If you are going to use a CTP with him, rage is his best option. I don't think he's very proc friendly. And honestly, I probably shouldn't even have the rage on him. If it wasn't for the fact he's one of my favorite characters, I wouldn't have it on him. So that's just my 2 cents there. But yeah, I have it on anyway. Gladiator. Gladiator is 100% a rage character. With him, he's AB meta. So you do not want meta, most effective tactic available. So if you are going to use him and you don't have a rage, it's kind of on the silly side, but at the very least an anger proc. He is a little bit proc friendly, so you probably could pull off an energy on him. I just don't recommend it. I think he does much better with rage, and if you miss one of those procs, it's really going to hurt. Adam is one of those very few exceptions. He is a PvP character. He's still pretty high in the meta. That is better with an energy reforged than he is with something like a conquest, in my opinion. If you do not have an energy for him, yes, you can use a conquest. Yes, you can use an authority. Adam has a second life, which is always nice. When he gets up from a second life, having that extra damage and that extra beatdown and everything else on there, I've noticed he seems to do a lot better with an energy, so I do recommend energy for him in a PvP setting. Odin, 100% right now probably would recommend Judgment because most, if not all of his skills, if you click on them, say lightning damage. This one is not a skill. Lightning damage. Lightning damage. That's how you know if they're elemental. Does it say it on all of their skills? Lightning damage, lightning damage, lightning damage. So for that particular reason, he's perfectly fine to put a Judgment on. And honestly, right now, he's kind of fallen out of top meta. He's still good, but I mean, you could use Rage, especially if you're using him in ABL, but I just haven't pulled it off him yet. So if you have a Judgment, I would probably use a Judgment for him. It's probably his best option. Okay, Madeline Pryor. So Madeline Pryor, you want a conquest on or an authority. She is PvP focused character. You want her artifact if you're going to use her in PvP. So if you don't have her artifact, you don't have her built, don't worry about it. But if you are going to build her, go ahead and give her an authority or a conquest. If I was going to give her anything else, I might give her a regen as my third option for her. Jean Grey, you have to make the choice. Are you going to use her in PvP or PvE? I use her in PvE, especially in AB. She pretty much can be used anywhere. And if you build her for PvE, she works in PvP and vice versa. So if you're going to use her in a PvE setting, Rage or Judgment as a secondary option because all of her stuff is fire damage. If you're going to use her in PvP, you want to start out with Conquest. If you do not have a Conquest, use an Authority. If you do not have an Authority, I would probably use a regen with her. She is also one of the very, very few characters who can actually do really good with a Greed. However, I would still choose a Conquest or an Authority before I chose a Greed. Regen would probably be my fourth option now. Wolverine. Wolverine is pretty much PvP character. You absolutely 100% need his artifact. Without his artifact, don't even use him in PvP. He's not top anymore. But I kind of feel like it's either going to be Conquest for him, or if you don't have a Conquest, an Authority that's Steel or Green. Those are the top three for him, in my personal opinion. Again, I don't focus heavy on PvP. All right, Storm. Storm is meta, one of the meta options for ABL only. So Rage, if you're going to go that route, normal Rage is fine. Obviously, Reforged Rages are always better. She is a Judgment character because of all of her skills. Being elemental based, she's one of those that you can use a Judgment on. So it's pretty much Rage or Judgment for her. Mystique. Mystique is a Rage character. If you build her, she is meta for ABX. Some people are going to choose not to build her because Green Goblin is the other option at tier 3. But if you tier 4 her, even at tier 3, I mean, tier 3 she does pretty decent, but tier 4 she can actually beat Goblin, but not by a ton. But if you're going to go that route and use her as a tier 4, go ahead and put a Rage on her. That's pretty much the only CTP that's going to be worth putting on her. I would not put an Insight on her. Rogue. Rogue is one of those characters who has a niche day for ABL, but she's also usable pretty much in every game mode, including World Boss Legendary, GBR if you wanted to use her there. She has a seasonal uniform, but she is a Rage or Judgment. Because I use her in ABL, I give her a Rage. But she does work with the Judgment. That would be her secondary best, in my opinion. Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus with the uniform, AB meta. And there's kind of certain niche modes that he can also do in World Boss Legendary as well. But yeah, he's got to be a Rage. No other option, either Rage or Break. Moon Knight. Moon Knight, when he was AB meta Rage, he has a very proc-friendly rotation. It is real easy. You throw your grenades and you do a 4-5, you let 5 proc. And then you do 2-1 as a filler. And then if your 6 is ready, you do 3 grenades, 4, use your 6 real quick, cancel it into 5 so you can proc on the 5 again. So for him, energy works fantastic, and he's pretty much primarily for World Boss Legendary. Yeah, I know. So when it comes to Black Widow, when she was meta, Rage was the way to go. She was meta because she was the first tier 4 speed character. She doesn't have the damage. She has the survivability. She doesn't have the damage. Don't put a CTP on Black Widow. Even using her as a striker, I would not recommend anyone else put a CTP on her. I already have it on her. I just never took it off. Luna 100% Rage. Now, she can do a Judgment as well because, again, elemental, all of her ice abilities. She is a Rage optional character. She's spam character. You're going to have to use something, like I said, Rage or Judgment. Spider-Man. Spider-Man is PvP focused, so an Authority, Steel Authority, Conquest being the best option, Steel Authority, or my third option for him would be a Refinement, which is, yeah, so that's the egg one. Helps with the survivability and stuff, makes him brutal and hard to fight in PvP. He's still up there. He's probably like in the top 10 for the meta for PvP. All right. Black Bolt. Black Bolt has fallen off. I don't know if I would Rage him anymore, but if you have his uniform, he's still viable in World Boss Legendary. He's just no longer AB meta, but he's a Rage character. Now, his rotation, you could probably pull off with an energy if you wanted to. I don't know why you would want to put an energy on him. I'm actually kind of curious now. I want to double check, see how many people have put an energy. Yeah, nobody's putting an energy on him, which I'm not surprised about, but you probably could pull off his rotation with an energy if you absolutely wanted to. But yeah, Rage is usually the way to go with him, but he's just not worth building, in my opinion, at this point. All right, Ghost Rider. Again, Rage Judgment character, but because we use him in ABL, ABX type of a scenario, honestly, the more I think about it, I think Judgment's probably a better option for him because I don't think there's a day I'm using him in ABL right now. So I don't even think I have Ghost Rider for any of those days. Just kind of double checking over my spreadsheet here on who I use for what days. Yeah, I don't use him in ABL. So honestly, a Judgment would be just fine on him. There's no reason to put a Rage on him. So I would say Judgment first, Rage second. I already had the Rage on him, so I might as well just leave it on him. And he's been replaced in a lot of different AB modes, and he might also be replaced now by the latest, but we're still waiting to see what her tier 4 looks like to see if she can outscore him or not. But yeah, anyway, as of right now, if you're going to use him, Judgment or Rage. Loki. 100% need a Rage on him. He's just too finicky with those procs, and you have a whole bunch of skills you're going to get into it. rage him up if you're going to use him. Thor, honestly, Judgment. I already had a rage on him. I'm not going to take it off. Judgment's number 1, rage number 2. Definitely PvE character. He's world boss legendary. He is not meta in AB or anything like that. I guess it's worth mentioning Loki is meta in AB. Ghost Rider might still be meta in AB. We'll find out when we tier 4 Scarlet Witch. And Thor here, like I said, world boss legendary. He's there's other options that are going to outperform him in AB. Sentry. Sentry, honestly, probably should be a Conquest or an Authority. I already have a regen on him, so I'm not going to pull it off. Regen's not terrible. I probably need to reforge it. I haven't reforged it because I would prefer to put an Authority on him with Steel. But he's a PvP character, and he's probably top 3 meta right now for PvP, in my opinion, with the uniform. So Conquest him up if you can. Ebony Maul, don't CTP. So when it comes to Silver Surfer, Conquest, or an Authority, that's reforged with Steel. If I was going to put a third option on him, I would probably go with the regen for him. Maybe a refinement, but probably the regen. Thanos. I have him with a rage because his old uniform, he was AB meta there for a while until Loki replaced him. I never took the rage off. He still does decently in World Boss Legendary for some of the levels where you need a villain. Right now, he's more, with his new uniform, he's better for PvP, so you're probably better off with a Conquest or an Authority. Maybe a regen for him because of his survivability and his ability to get his hit points back. I think he sings more with regen than a refinement or a patience. But yeah, if you're going to go PvE route for him, which I don't recommend, rage is a decent option, but I would probably build him for PvP. And like I said, Conquest, Authority, or regen. Actually, I might put a regen on him specifically above an Authority, I think. Cable. Cable is kind of tricky. I feel like his newest uniform needs a rage. You might be able to pull off an energy with him. Old uniforms, definitely an energy was fantastic for Cable. But right now with his newest one, I have to recommend a rage. And he is meta for ABL for a single day. Like Rogue is meta for a single day. He's decent in World Boss Legendary as well. Namor, I probably wouldn't build anymore. I don't know if I would CTP him at all. But if you're going to CTP him, he's one of those that I think he's better off with a Judgment. He can do a Judgment or Rage, but he's better off with a Judgment. He's not meta anywhere. He's pretty much World Boss Legendary at this point if you're going to use him. Cyclops is worth putting an insight on. There's other characters you can put him on as well, and this is not his latest uniform. This one is. But when it comes to using him, it's insight or nothing, and it's probably nothing because I think there's better options to put it on. By the way, this is an example of that Anger proc I was talking about. See, increase basic damage by 0.8% per 1% of dodge. It's either dodge or crit rate based upon what's rolled. Yeah, Professor X. Professor X, all elemental, basically mind damage, so Judgment. I would not put a rage on him. He can use a rage, but he's not really meta anywhere. It's World Boss Legendary pretty much for him. Unfortunately, he doesn't really do anything for AB, so yeah, Judgment. Black Panther, I don't know. If you build him, he's great in World Boss Legendary. I don't know if he's proc friendly. So I don't know if he can use an energy or not, but I know that's the only spot he's really meta in if you tier 4 him. Do not put a CTP on Cap. If you're going to work on Carnage, he's fallen off on PvP, Conquest, or Authority. Because he's fallen off, I don't know if I would use either one of those on him, so I'd probably put something like either a Patience or a Regen, depending on what I have extra, if you tier 4 him. But again, I just not sure if I would still recommend building him. Not that he's bad. He's just starting to fall off pretty decently compared to other characters. Hulk. Hulk is all about hit points, and I would probably recommend putting a regen on him because of the extra hit points and survivability, or possibly a patience. Conquest is still a viable option, but it's all about getting the hit points for the extra damage. And that's if you want to build Hulk. Venom. Venom, I wouldn't CTP right now. If you're going to CTP him, I'd probably put a rage on him. When it comes to Sharon Rogers, Captain America, 100% energy, no question about it. Nice, easy, smooth way to proc. She's probably one of the ones that can get the most out of an energy, especially a reforged one with beatdown for World Boss Legendary. And she's worth tier 4ing. I have her tier 3, but she's worth tier 4ing just for how easily she can like walk through content for World Boss Legendary. She's fantastic. Iron Man, if you were going to give him anything, he can actually work with both an energy or a rage, but I wouldn't CTP him at this point. No CTP, no CTP. Miles Morales is still really good in World Boss Legendary. Judgment. He has elemental attacks. A lot of people don't realize that. He's got this lightning damage on all of his skills. So Judgment is probably, he's one of those characters, just, yeah, put a Judgment on him. He's not very proc friendly in my opinion. I know there's some people who can pull off procking with him, but I don't think he's going to get the chain hit advantage on an energy, so I would put a Judgment. Energy would be the backup option. Captain Marvel, I think she pretty much just got replaced by Scarlet Witch now, but if you were going to build her, or you already have her built, Rage is her go-to. I don't really feel like she's usable with any other CTP but a Rage, and she actually extends. Actually, I forgot to mention that Rogue also extends it as well. The proc window for Rage, she actually extends it, so you have a longer period of time for her using it versus other characters. Hela, if you're going to use her in World Boss Legendary, I would probably recommend a Destruction for her with Beatdown. If you are going to use her in PvP, probably an Authority. I mean, Conquest is obviously better, but I don't know if I would use a Conquest on her when I have other characters to put it on. Mephisto, I don't know if I would CTP him at this point, but obviously Judgment would be the way to go. No CTP. As you can see here with Gore, Authority or Conquest would be a better option, but Authority with Steel is a fantastic option for Gore. He's still great in PvP. Kang, I would not put a CTP on. Null, no CTP. As you can see here, Greed for old Quicksilver. I've not really experimented with the new uniform, so I don't know if he would still be a Greed character or not, but pretty much Wolverine, Jean, and Quicksilver are the three go-to for using Greed. And this is what I'm talking about, that secondary option, increase all basic attacks. It is much better to re-roll this and get ambush on it, especially if you're going to use them in PvP. Doom, I wouldn't recommend building anymore. I already have a Mighty Authority on him. I'm probably going to pull it off of him at some point because he's fallen out of the meta, in my opinion. But Authority with a Steel or a Conquest, because PvP is pretty much the only place people are still using him, and even then it's rare. No CTP, no CTP, no... Proxima Midnight is Insider, no CTP. She's a fantastic support. Scarlet Witch, you can use a Judgment on Scarlet Witch. I think she's going to work better with a Rage. I think she's going to have days potentially for ABL. I don't think you're going to go wrong with the Judgment, but it's going to be Judgment or Rage. I don't think she's super proc friendly, and honestly, you want to have all of her skills inside the proc anyway. So yeah, don't try something else. And she's pretty much going to be AB. That's like the main reason to use her. I don't think I would put a Judgment on APOC in the future, but I already had it on him, so I never took it off. So if you're going to use something with Apocalypse, probably a Judge. No, I can't. No CTP. Don't put a CTP on him. He's fallen off too much. Strife, I probably wouldn't put an Insight on, but that would be the only CTP I would consider. Nothing for Havoc. No CTP. Continuing with no CTP on a lot of these characters for a while. I will pause when I get to a character. Okay, Polaris. Polaris is one of the characters that's worth putting an Insight on because of her support leadership abilities. Let's see. Anyone else here I would use a CTP on? I pulled CTPs off a lot of these characters. Taskmaster is worth an Insight. Probably towards the top of my list for Insight, in fact. I wouldn't put anything else on Taskmaster. Ancient One. I have an Authority, a Steel Authority. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend it anymore. She did really good in PvP for a while. She's kind of fallen off. There's better options. So if you have a Mighty Steel, put it on someone else. So maybe would consider putting a Patience on her or a Refinement because she's kind of like backup PvP if you need a bigger roster or if a lot of your characters are blocked for a day. But I don't recommend building her right now. Enchantress is worth considering an Insight for. I just don't have one on her, but she's pretty much support. No CTP. Coulson, especially with his newest uniform, so he works for villains and heroes, is definitely Insight worthy with the new uniform. Without it, I probably wouldn't put an Insight on him. I had one on him anyway. I never took it off. But yeah, with the uniform, Insight worthy. Without the uniform, probably not, because he's only usable for heroes. Rocket, nothing. No CTPs for any of these folks. You can consider one for Shuri, because she has that lead support, but honestly, she's probably better off with an Anger proc or something along those lines. She is good in her own right, but I only use her as a support and a lead. No CTPs on the rest of these characters. right here, Green Goblin. If you were going to use Green Goblin instead of tier 4ing Mystique, Judgment's the way to go. He seems to do better with a Judgment than Rage. He's one of those rare characters, and the only spot he's really meta is ABX. And that's if you don't use Mystique. So he's not technically top meta, he's secondary meta. No CTPs for the rest of these. Nick Fury, even though it's worth considering an insight, there are any team he's on, someone else is going to have an insight, so I wouldn't give him an insight. Same thing with Sin. I don't think I would give her an insight either, because she will probably be on a team with someone with an insight, but she's at least wouldn't be a terrible idea to put an insight on her. No CTPs on any of these. White Fox, probably one of my top choices for a CTP of insight. So insight, if you're going to use her as a support, she's, like I said, one of the best supports in the game for characters with leadership. All right. No more CTPs on any of these folks. Morgan Le Fay is worth considering for an insight. I put it on her because I think that's a good choice, and it covers a lot of my teams for AB. Ronin's worth considering for an insight, but I probably wouldn't put one on him either. Skip past a lot of these characters. Like, there's just no insight characters. So, Beta Ray Bill. Yes, you could put an insight on him. But this is one of those characters I would put a judgment on. Because, again, all of the elemental skills being fire. He has a self-leadership. He has support buffs. He has buffs built in left and right. So, he works great as a support character. Which is why I would say it's okay to consider an insight. But I think Judgment's a better option for him. He's pretty much World Boss Legendary. He does push some little bit in AB, but not enough to make me suggest to others that you build him. There are other options for days that he's good at. So just take that with a grain of salt. If you want to build him for AB, if you're using him in ABL, fine, rage him up. If you're not going to use him in ABL because there are better options and he's not the meta there, then Judgment. And if you don't want to use him for attack at all in ABX or in World Boss Legendary, you can consider an insight, but there's better options for insights. So I probably wouldn't CTP him up if it wasn't for the Judgment. Back to no CTPs. Now, here's honorable mentions. All three of these ladies. Gamora, Shadow Shell, and Gwen. All three of them are decent in multiple game modes. And if you don't have Luna, they're your go-tos for AB. If you have Luna, obviously Luna's better. Not everybody can get Luna. So it's probably going to be down to Gwen and Gamora for AB for you. They're also very good in World Boss Legendary. So for Gamora, yeah, she's proc friendly. You can consider an energy for her, but I probably would put a rage on her. So rage. Shadow Shell, I'm pretty sure, is not elemental. No, she is, because the poison damage is considered elemental, just like Green Goblin. So for Shadow Shell, it would probably be Judgment and then a rage if you had to. She is proc friendly. As you can see here, I've got a 200 proc. That's a poison damage proc. And this does fantastic. She still walks through content for World Boss Legendary for me. And then for Gwen, it would probably be, since she's proc friendly, you could pull off an energy on her. I would probably put a rage on her as well. If I was going to choose a CTP, it would probably be a rage. So you have a Judgment, Rage, Judgment, Rage for these three. I have a refinement on him. I don't know if that's necessarily the best option here. You can ignore that. Probably no CTP because I don't think he's worth using. A lot of these characters are not. I would not put a Judgment on Supergiant anymore. I don't think she's worth building at the moment. No CTPs. You can consider an insight for Colossus for PvP. If you're really into PvP, he's a great support. Hope Summers, if you're going to build Hope Summers, who she is expensive, rage. Absolutely rage, hands down, no question. No CTP, no CTP, no CTP on any of these characters here. I know some people might put like an energy on Gambit, but no, just put a proc on him. He's just not worth it right now. No CTP. Transcendence, like I said, a lot of the clone characters, they recommend putting Transcendence on. I don't know exactly why, but that's why it's there. I don't recommend it, though. I never use them. Let's see. Who else do we have here that's worth putting a CTP on? No CTP on all these characters that I'm just flipping past. I don't want to waste time talking about characters too much that aren't worth putting a CTP on. Yeah, we won't talk about that. I like Morbius, okay? I don't care if you like him or not. I would not give a CTP to Civ. She used to be meta, which is why I've got an anger proc on her. But even though she's a great support and still viable support, I would not put an insight on her. All right, Nebula. So if you can't afford Hope, Nebula's worth building for AB meta, and Judgment. Definitely Judgment on her. As you can see here, fire, fire, fire. Every one of her skills is fire, so I would give her a Judgment. You could give her a Rage, but yeah, give her a Judgment. Won't talk about that either. Titania used to have a swap meta where she used to have a Rage. I pulled her Rage off, so I probably wouldn't recommend a Rage for her. Valkyrie, I would 100% recommend an Insight for. She's a character that works with heroes and villains alike, so she's definitely worth an Insight. If you're building Human Torch, Judgment's worthwhile, but he's just not worth building anymore. So all of these are going to be no CTPs in my opinion. Even the Moonstone. So Moonstone back in the day used to be really good because she's not worth building. Don't put an energy on her. Mysterio is one of those characters worth an Insight. Again, it's all about having those support options for AB in my opinion. No CTP on these characters. No CTPs. Not just because they have no CTPs, but because I don't recommend it either. I don't recommend CTPs on any of these characters. Trying to see if there's another character I recommend a CTP on. I'm almost towards the end of the list. I would not put an Insight on Wave, but you can consider it lead support character. Angela. Angela's worth an Insight. Great support character. She has a support on her uniform. Insight just makes her a better support. Clea. I could have sworn I used to have a Reforged Transcendence on her, but doesn't matter. I wouldn't recommend putting it on her right now. She's just not worth building at the moment. Insight on Ghost Panther is the only CTP I would consider for Ghost Panther is Insight. Like I said, just supports for the most part. And no CTPs on these characters. Maybe an Insight on Satana. So Satana is a fantastic support with both her uniform and her artifact. So if you threw an Insight on her, if you needed it, remember, you gotta decide. If your team has someone with Insight for all your days for AB, don't add in extra ones unless you want to have them with different skills to balance it out. None of these. Dazzler might be worth considering an Insight for. I have it on Polaris, so I don't need it on Dazzler, but I think Dazzler would be the other one besides for Polaris to consider the Insight for. No CTPs for all of these characters. Still no CTPs. Insight's worth it for Black Cat. Again, if you have it on the other character in the team up, because she's not used as much as she used to be. No CTPs. And I think I'm towards the end of the list finally, right? So many characters in this game. But yeah, no CTPs on any of these characters. Still no CTPs. No CTPs. None of them. Yep, that's it. That's the full list. That's my opinion on who you should put a CTP on and the best CTPs for each of those characters. Hopefully that was useful or helpful in some way, shape, or form. Feel free to leave comments below if you agree or disagree, what you would do differently, and I will catch you in the next one.